course, as we're getting set to come on air, the story around identity management continue to crop up. This is the age of identity theft. Verify me, knowing you, very difficult to know who is standing next to you because it's difficult. These days, online fraud, technology fraud is on the increase. So what is Nigeria's quest for a reliable ID system? Let's talk to one of the gentlemen in the business who understand how it all works, and that is Esigie Aguele, who is the managing director and CEO at VerifyMe Nigeria. He's live to us from Abuja studios. Esigie, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Just as we thought that, well, perhaps we're getting a hang of the whole identity management, identity system, folks are saying, I'm on my phone, I'm putting my PIN and whatever, and someone is standing next to me or a couple of miles away and is stealing my identity. This is rattling the banking system. Billions of naira are getting lost. Folks' accounts have been hacked. How serious do you think the world we live in is right now? We asked for technology, now we have it, now we got problems.
Yes, we do. And the problem of identity verification is very serious, and it's twofold. Of course, you have the cybersecurity side, where organizations who hold the identity of Nigerians must always be compliant to high security standards so that they do not get hacked and have the data of their customers taken by individuals who shouldn't have it. The second issue we have of identity verification in Nigeria, or knowing your customer, which is what we call KYC, is that many people also are not documented in Nigeria. So it's very difficult to give services as well, because you need a certain level of trust in order to deliver services to Nigerians. And this is the reason why today the Nigerian Identity Management Commission, NIMC, is having, today on September 16th, having the National ID Day to create awareness about ID verification, the need for ID verification, and to also provide the opportunity and the platform where people can get information on how they can document themselves and get their national ID number, which is their NIN.
Yes, so we've got the NIMC, the central bank's doing BVN, everybody's trying to key in, the Securities and Exchange Commission is also trying to key in, the FCC, the ICPC, NFIU, all want data, want everyone to be online. Then you talk about the credit market. If you commit a problem or fraud in one bank, the banks want to get you in the other one. If you own a bank, the central bank says now they can seize your account in another bank, so which means it's a global open space. But the problem with an open space is that fraud becomes more easy. Mobile phone is on a smartphone is on everybody's hand. So I'm talking about this very murky identity world. What solutions are there that you think will protect me?
Excellent question, actually. So, you know, documentation of individuals is just the first step. Really, it's biometric documentation, which is what all of these agencies you mentioned, so that's NIMC, NIBS, and also FRSE, which is Nigerian Driver's License, all do. And they collect biometrics to standard. But in addition to biometrics, there actually are technology tools that can enhance verification and ID authentication. In 2019 today, there are facial recognition tools. There are so many different types of biometric tools that can really compare the biometrics of the person attempting to receive a service at a point in time to the biometrics that was captured when that individual was documented. So I would say that ID verification is the first step, but to specifically answer your question about what can protect you is all organizations in Nigeria that are providing services really looking into the best solutions to secure the data of their customers. And one of the best ways they can do that is by actually doing on-site biometric authentication as well, which is real-time and available through many organizations in Nigeria today.
Okay, so let's bring in private sector folks like you, because when we talk about technology, it's private sector institutions, organizations like yours that will provide the identity. The government can only supervise and put what you call legislation around what is being done. So when we talk about the private sector in Nigeria, we're very happy. We've seen folks doing what you called data application. They can now write software and things like that. So, but with this also come folks that perhaps you can trust everyone who is an application writer and things like that. So what do you guys need from on the side of the government to help us have a secure financial system?
Well, that's a loaded question, and I think the government is already doing a lot of this, which is why they're having National ID Day. The first level is obviously the documentation. The second and very key thing we need is actually the interoperability of this data, which you mentioned, across organizations. So, for example, an incident happens at one financial institution. Another financial institution should be able to, as quickly as possible, have access to that information for their own decision making. So I would say standardization of the data so that it can be interoperable is where we would need our government to come in and help us assist to make sure that it can be standardized and that organizations who have access to this data comply with the standardization so that we can have proper reporting. The issue really mostly also with what you talk about apart from ID verification is actually the reporting aspect of it. The reporting capability and the data standardization so systems can understand each other is really where we have a lot of area for improvement. And I think when we cover that gap and close that gap, we'll actually be able to provide real-time, insightful data to decision makers that are providing services so that we can prevent a lot of fraud in Nigeria.
Okay, a final one, Esigie, has to do with the business solutions for businesses. You look at the unpleasant story of British Airways and a few other who have got hundreds or thousands of account holders or people who are buying tickets getting hacked and all of that, costing untold millions of dollars in losses and people's ID. It happened in a number of companies in Europe and elsewhere. So for Nigerian businesses, how do we protect ourselves? What solutions are there from private sector folks like yourself to bring us up to speed in protecting everyone, knowing me, knowing you, knowing who actually I'm doing business with?
And it varies, right? So there is one way when it's happening online. It's really very difficult. I think actually Nigeria is really as secure as most countries with our e-commerce. One of the things private sector organizations can implement that we actually have now are really facial recognition tools, OTP tools as well, where you send codes to registered phone numbers so people can verify their e-commerce transactions. One of the ways that I would say online fraud will be stopped in the near future actually is that when folks are paying for their transactions online, there will be additional layers of two-factor authentication and biometric authentication that will really reduce a lot of the fraud that we see today. In terms of in-person, like with the case with British Airways, I think organizations just struggle with continuing to keep up with, I would say, some fraudsters who are innovative, and technology always sometimes has to catch up. Right now, technology is in a great place where if we actually implement the tools that we have available, such as facial recognition, and like I said, there are many organizations in Nigeria that people can reach out to have these services, we will be able to greatly probably reduce frauds for customers close to 100%.
Esigie Aguele, thank you very much, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at VerifyMe Nigeria. We hope we'll give you guys all the best as you hold the National Identity Day. Thank you so much, data discussions there. Thank you so much from our Abuja studios.